World Wildlife Fund International Head of Policy, Climate and Energy, Dr. Fernanda Carvalho, is joining us now to share her opinion on the agreements reached at the summit. You've just been listening to some of what our Minister, Barbara Creecy, was saying about the outcomes. The President of COP27 was saying that none of the parties may feel that they came out with all of their interests reflected, but was it significant enough, particularly for developing countries? The text, the minister saying it's a positive one, but is it significant enough to say that, yes, we can wait for COP27 to finalize some of these issues?
I think that, of course, we have to highlight that the decision on loss and damage is a very important one because it creates a fund. The fund is not created at this COP, but there will be 1 year of discussion and the fund will be created at the next COP. But this process is set here, and that's very, very important from a developing country perspective because they need support for when impacts happen. But I would say that the mitigation work program is still not finalized, and that's equally important for developing countries because you're talking, that's the way to reduce emissions and therefore reduce the impact. So mitigation is also a way of addressing loss and damage. We do have the fund to address the impacts when the impacts happen, but it would be important also to have a program that prevents the impact and that also contributes to keeping 1.5 of global warming within reach. This is a key limit, this is a key target, beyond which impacts will be much more serious, as science has said. So I think that some decisions are still pending. We also need a strong cover tax. The discussions of the cover tax are still happening while I'm here talking to you. And it's really, really important that we have a mention to 1.5 there, that we have some kind of provision talking about phasing out fossil fuels, because this is, of course, the key contributor to climate change. And then if we have this package, we already have a good positive result on loss and damage, but still pending on mitigation and also a strong cover decision, I think we'll be able to say that this COP has delivered. Without that, it will be really hard to say that.
Does the language and the commitments balance as an equally some of these stickler points, as you just mentioned on mitigation, it does keep 1.5 alive, but just in terms of all three of them, loss and damage, adaptation and mitigation, is an equal balance of it all reflected in the text?
We need to see this balance better reflect, as I mentioned, we advanced on loss and damage. There was advance on adaptation too, because the adaptation global goal will be defined on the next COP, but the process here has advanced to a certain extent, so that gives us some security that during this year we'll deliver what we need. I would say that on mitigation, we got a bare minimum. This is the program that we have. It could be much stronger because the NDCs in this decade, the nationally determined contributions, the national plans, we had a report just before the COP that says we are not on track. We would have to reduce emissions by 43% by 2030 in relation to 2019 emissions. And that was the synthesis report that the UNFCCC did, and that's a recommendation by the IPCC. And the finding is that we are only reducing 3.6% of global emissions by 2030 in relation to 2019 levels with the numbers that we have. So there's a big gap still, 39%. We can't wait till the next round of NDCs, that it's only in 2025, to be closing this gap. So this mitigation program is really, really strong. We need to give a balance to reducing emissions in this decade and not only advance on compensating countries or supporting countries after impacts have hit. So I think that balance is still to be seen, and this is the discussion in the room right now.
And just in terms of Article 6, what happens next? Because I believe that the negotiators were trying to walk through what is said to be a huge volume of detailed technical work on the rules for future market and non-market-based mechanisms.
I think Article 6 is a piece that is very important in this equation. I think that it has advanced a lot with the closing of the rule book last year. What was left for this year was the discussion of the details, because the Article 6 has three parts. One of them is cooperation among countries, the other is the global market, and the last one is the non-market mechanisms. So here there was a lot of the discussions on these details to make those mechanisms advance. What is important on Article 6 is that a market, if it's created or when it's created, it cooperates to enhance ambition rather than, let countries not do what they have to do. So the market has a complementary role in enhancing ambitions. And the details are very, very important to keep the market with environmental integrity, to guarantee that we are really getting to the reductions that the world needs to get. So here we had some advance on that too. That's still, it seems that we heard that the agreements regarding Article 6 have also been adopted. So it's going. We think that the only issues that are pending are the mitigation work program and the cover decision that gives the political guidance to the world around combating climate change. So the key political issues on fossil fuels, also on nature and the whole of nature, those are all in the cover decision that's still under discussion.
And just on that last sentence of yours, particularly given the current global economic environment within the context of conflict on political leadership, we saw China and the US not agreeing on some pivotal directions. What are your expectations there? What should happen and who should have a say? Because that too is important.
Of course, those countries are super important countries because one is the major historical emitter and the other is the current major emitter. But, this agreement has survived times of crisis like the COVID crisis. Now we have the energy and food supply crisis due to the war in Ukraine and some economic crisis also connected to that. We hope those countries will be able to play the key role that they play in the climate regime. We also saw that there were conversations here and that in some proposals they are trying to converge. I think one example is the loss and damage fund that has been adopted here. After lots and lots of discussions, countries got to an agreement, and that needs to be acknowledged, although we also need agreement on other issues as well.